So Julie, you were scheduled last, or not
Privilege
last.
of wrapping up the day.
Not last but not least. You were scheduled wrap up because Walmart really represents the mega exemplar of everything that we're talking about today, and if for no other reason than for the sheer scale of the company, it represents a social ecosystem and an environmental ecosystem for that matter. So just start out by giving us the size of Walmart by
Sure.
whatever metrics you choose.
Sure. First, thanks for having me and thanks for making it to the end of the day. Walmart has 11,000 stores around the country, around the world. We have over 2 million associates around the world. It is over $500 billion in revenue in a year. And there's not an issue we talked about today that you couldn't probably tie authentically back to our company.
What leapt out at you today as you were listening to the conversations?
I think part of what I was really thinking about, and I learned a lot today, so it's always helpful for me to listen to how companies are grappling with this. In many ways, I saw each conversation as a company thinking about a lever they can pull to make change. And that's really how we think about things, is what are the issues we have an authentic reason to be involved in the change in, and what are the levers we can pull? And so you heard everything from kind of policy positions to how you work in your supply chain to one-for-one customer engagement work. And we really use all those tools to think about with the goal of really, we aspire to change a system for better long-term impact.
Walmart's a company that used to, I think this has faded a lot, but used to suffer a lot of big city snobbery toward it,
Sure.
especially in cities that didn't have a Walmart and people didn't really know what they were talking about. I was impressed during Hurricane Katrina. I was working for ABC News. The hurricane happened. I couldn't fly into New Orleans, so I flew into Houston and drove to New Orleans. It was about an 8-hour trip at night. And along the route, there were at least 2 Walmarts along that route. And my crew and I needed supplies and stuff, so we went into Walmart. And Walmart was in the middle of a rescue effort at that point.
Yeah.
They were like, they were staying open late. They were letting people who were fleeing New Orleans, sleep in their cars in their parking lots. And they were sending truckloads of stuff, water and things like that. And that to me said, this is not the Walmart story that most people know about. Was that typical, or was that a breakthrough? Was that a turning point?
So it is typical now, and I would say it now is thought of as the kind of beginning of our modern interpretation of our purpose. So we are one of those companies that was founded with a purpose.
What was the purpose?
The tagline, save money, live better, and this idea that people in the middle of the country deserved access to high quality goods at affordable prices. And frankly, there's stories of I had to drive to Kansas City for a broom, and those kinds of things was really at the heart of the founding, was this idea of equitable access and money going as far as possible. But Katrina, I was not with the company at that point, but I joined a couple of years later. And what the story you tell is absolutely the story that is felt internally. And the leadership team had been doing a lot of thinking about why were we perceived this way? What were the fair critiques? What were the things that maybe were misunderstood? And frankly, I think society expectations were changing. And so they'd been really in this exploration. And when Katrina happened, the story goes that the CEO at the time just said, do the right thing. This is going to overwhelm us. Decisions won't be able to be made from the center. You actually know what we stand for. We stand for serving communities. We're going to have the things people need. And you're going to need to make a lot of decisions and make the right decisions. And our
But the part of the decision was they don't have to buy this stuff.
They don't have to buy this stuff. There is a picture as you enter our home office now that's an artist rendering of what was an AP picture of Walmart semi-trucks lined up being escorted by emergency service personnel to get into Katrina, into New Orleans, because of our expertise in supply chain and logistics, we were able to get into the city with supplies faster than the government. And so they were escorting us in. And the kind of story is, and the why that hangs there is because we now say, what would it take for us to be that company every day? And it's about 3 months after Katrina that Lee Scott, who was our CEO at the time, gave what's referred to as the 21st Century Leadership Speech, which laid out, this is 2005, this now feels commonplace, but laid out our sustainability goals, so to be zero waste, 100% renewable, and to sell products so that people don't have to choose between affordable and sustainable, as that last panel was talking about. It called for an increase in the minimum wage. It really redefined what we felt like. And the whole purpose was, this won't just be the right thing to do, it will be a good thing for the company. It will make us a stronger company.
What is stronger how? Stronger by what metric? Profit?
Yeah, so a number of things. When our strategy gets kind of boiled down to a page with the board, with our CEO, purpose is at the top, save money, people live better, we've got our values, we've got kind of where we play and how we play. But at the bottom of all of that, it says, to create shared value for associates, shareholders, stakeholders, customers. And so it really is this idea that everybody needs to benefit. And so in sustainability, there are a number of things that don't have to choose between the right thing to do and something that helps your bottom line. When you reduce waste, you often save money.
Well, that was another, sort of Walmart epiphany moment for me. I forget what state I was in, but again, it was a relatively rural area, and I needed to shoot an overview of the community, and I climbed a hill, and right below us was a Walmart, and the roof, one side to the other, this was about
panels.
12, 15 years ago, covered with solar panels.
Yeah.
When did that happen?
Oh, that was part of the speech. I mean, we are one of the largest, and every year it changes a little bit, but one of the largest consumers of solar. So I spend time in our philanthropy, but also with the business. And solar and renewable energies are a great example of where we don't invest philanthropically because our largest leverage is our purchasing power. By purchasing at that scale, using it, we change the market and make it more affordable for all. And that market needs to work. And so really thinking about what levers you have at your disposal, and by doing this in certain ways, whether it's impact investing, whether it's pure capital investments, whether it's philanthropy, what are you creating in that market and how can you reshape it to create better outcomes? And
your job title is what exactly?
Vice President of Philanthropy.
Okay, most of us think philanthropy is giving away money.
Sure.
But you're talking the sustainability, using solar panels, changing the product. That's not exactly the traditional notion of philanthropy.
No, and so I spend about half my time with the company on shared value initiatives and helping, because that's embedded in the business. Yes, we're a team of about 60, but in many ways that work is embedded in each buyer. If we want to go talk about deforestation, I'm going to go to the beef buyer. I'm going to go to, because it's their job to really think about how we sustainably source beef that doesn't cause deforestation. And so it becomes that person's job, and I'm just the consultant helping think about it and measure it and all those things, the team that I'm on. And then we think about where are their market failures. So as big as Walmart is, we can do a lot. But it's not going to solve everything. And then we engage our suppliers and think about how do we really lead a movement of businesses in our ecosystem? How do we create additional partnerships so that that scale is even bigger? But then, frankly, the problems we face are more complex than that. And so often we end up thinking about, okay, that gets us pretty far, but there's still a market failure. There's still a system gap that keeps us from being healthy. And that's where we invest our philanthropy, to make it all work together.
So I was looking up Sam Walton's past, the founder, started the company in 1962. In 1992, he wrote about philanthropy, and he explicitly said, that's not what we do. I think his language was, we are not really and should not be in the charity business. Yeah. So what happened?
I think it would be a both and these days. And I think, he really did believe that we should be creating business models. The Waltons and Walmart have always had kind of a long-term orientation. So this idea that the social, environmental, and economic outcomes converge at the right period.
He believed in win-win.
Yeah, he believed in win-wins. He believed when communities thrived, the company thrived. Yeah. He believed there was this intertwined nature of company success and community success. I think today we see how much those systems are often broken and know that we need to bring every tool at our disposal. And when philanthropy is the right one to be a part of it, we use it.
Is there any sense that Walmart is making up for harm that it's done? And again, there's been all kinds of issues over
Sure.
the years. And again, going to my experience, I'm currently producing a documentary set in a small town in the South, and its beautiful downtown area is no longer beautiful. That's not just because of the Walmart that moved into town. There was also, 15 years ago, the process began when there was a shopping mall was built about 25 miles away. It began to die, but then Walmart came in and the downtown is gone. That's a repeated story that I think is valid. And my question is there any sense in which Walmart has found this impulse in the belief that it needs to compensate for harm done?
So I think that we know that any business has externalities. And and that sounds so
Externality
inhuman.
really sounds like
yeah, it
euphemism.
sounds so, but we know that, we heard about packaging, we heard about all of these things that in our culture, and so today when you think about, others were talking about impact investing and the screening out of risk and various things, and we certainly think we want to minimize the negative, the harm that can be created in a consumer economy. But we also want to create value. And so how do you bring all that together to really make sure that, if the last panel was talking about lowering the use of plastic, so how are we redesigning packaging? All of these things have to be done. How do we create ecosystems, you were talking about small businesses, where they really can thrive because of the traffic we bring? All of that is stuff that we have to think about and frankly, maybe design in more sophisticated ways than ever before.
I want to ask members of the audience, it's time to submit questions if you'd like to, and we're going to keep talking in the meantime. So I understand that your answer to my question about whether essentially Walmart felt guilty and this was redressing wrongs, your answer was how they're doing it, but still didn't answer my question.
Yeah.
Is that one of the reasons they're doing it? Or was it outside pressure? Was
Yeah.
it pressure from communities? Was it the criticism that seemed like it was a bad business prospect?
Yeah, my sense is probably a little bit of all. I
Really?
mean, super candidly, I think most of you in companies know that it's never kind of one thing
Right.
that changes this work. And so I talked about Katrina happening in the midst of some time where the leaders were talking a lot to critics. We also do these trips where we really help our own company and our team understand issues more deeply and connect to them more personally by seeing them, experiencing them. I think that the rise of shared value and double and triple bottom line, all of these things come together along with kind of going to the purpose and articulating what would it be like to be this company every day.
Yeah.
That starts to really build a movement that gets bigger and bigger.
So with more than 2 million employees, again, that's a small city, and that's spread around the world, not just the United States, the 2.2 million. How are you doing by your employees?
Sure.
In terms of wages, in terms of, I know that the company has had to settle lawsuits on not supporting pregnant employees and giving them accommodations that they need. Talk about some of that.
Sure. So about 5 years ago, we started what we call a real HR transformation, a workforce transformation. We've invested over $4 billion in wages over the last 4 years. But that's not all. So we think about a framework of access, stability, and mobility, and we work across all of them. With 5 generations in the workforce, you can't say employees want one thing. Each employee has a kind of different mix, and so we think about, several people this morning talked about access employment. Who do you hire? How do you make sure you're giving good opportunities? That's been everything from banning the box and hiring opportunity youth. Then you've got stability, which has been the investment in wages, has been a real, we now have for maternity leave up to 16 weeks between the 10 weeks for maternity and 6 weeks of parental leave.
Is that quite new?
That's about a year and a half old.
But again, in response to the lawsuits?
Yeah, well, no, really listening to associates. So all of this started as a transformation. It started with a conversation about wage, about skill building, and about scheduling, which were kind of some of the early things we heard. And then we do these listening tours on a regular basis to say, what's missing in this? How could we do better?
And is this philosophically of a piece with providing water in emergencies? Is this all, are these separate impulses, or is this part of the same thing?
Probably
Is that
part of
your
the
area
same
as
thing.
philanthropy?
Yeah, So I think there's some of the same thing here. In the workforce transformation, we've reduced turnover. We have some of the lowest turnover we've had in years. We've had great customer service scores improving. So it really is designing, we built 200 academies, which are these training facilities around the country so people can drive to them. They are about 2 weeks. You spend half the time in the classroom, half the time on the floor learning. At the end of it, you have up to 19 hours you can apply to college. We have $1 a day college program. So all
Why
of
is
this
this your
comes together
business?
because we think that by attracting the right workforce, by building the right skills, we're moving faster. We are providing a better customer service, and we do think this is a shared value. We do see where, yes, it's a pretty big investment. There's no doubt that there's a cost to it. And frankly, when we announced it, we lost about 10% of our market cap. But over that time, as we've gained it back, the investors have said, wait, we do see that you're getting value from this. By doing this,
So
you're
did that
having
feel like
great
a scary
outcome.
gamble at the time?
I think it was well thought through with our board and our leader and our CEO. I think there was a lot of feeling that they were doing the right thing. But yeah, it's not, to go to an investor meeting and have that confidence and say this is going to take a while, but it's the right investment today and it's going to pay off. You really do count on a board that believes in it and says we're in it for the long term.
We have a question. Walmart's minimum wage is lower than many of its peers like Target and Amazon and Costco. You've been criticized for that by Senator Bernie Sanders. Sanders has suggested that you add an hourly worker to your board, to the board you were just talking about. Is that something you've considered as part of your broader advocacy program?
So we look all the time. Things like wage is looked at every 2 weeks by geography. So for instance, the competitors you outlined there have a different geographic footprint and a number of things. And where we are in the same markets, we'd be in a fairly comparable place. We're looking at what's the role of associates in the conversation. How do those ideas come up? What's in the governance? I think we're on a journey, and we're always looking at what's next and how to structure it well.
Another question, there was a shooting at a Walmart yesterday outside. 3 people died there. Walmart has taken a position very recently on assault rifles. Also, I want to talk about vaping, but talk about
Sure.
the decision on assault rifles.
Sure. So we were, the site of a mass shooting and in August, and that is something you never want to face. And for the community of El Paso, it's really important that we call it. It was a shooting tied to hatred. It was hatred from outside their community into a store that is known for serving an incredibly diverse community and employing an incredibly diverse community. So it felt incredibly personal. That's always hard. And the first priority in a situation like that is the safety of your associates and your customers. And we faced threats and a number of things over that time that made it very complicated to navigate. But we have always had higher standards than the law around selling guns. So in 2005, we had stopped selling assault rifles. We had moved out of handguns. Later, we had followed kind of what the same things Dick's Sporting Goods, so higher wages. We required an affirmative background check as opposed to the absence of a red light. But we really said that may not be enough where we are. And this has been emphasized from the stage, but I think it's really important. We spent a lot of time talking to stakeholders across the board as we thought through this. There are people who are smarter on this than us. And so ultimately what we chose to do is to get out of a number of types of ammunition, to further reduce the types of guns we sell to really just hunting rifle type work, to call for universal background checks, to call for the debate of the assault weapons ban.
Has that hurt profits?
We said publicly we'd probably move from about 20% market share in ammunition to low single digits. Mm-hmm. It felt right for us. We also did need to honor that our history is with sportsmen and hunters. Yeah. And that still makes up a big customer population for us. So I can say, in the Post, it's pretty much exactly 50-50 fan mail and hate mail to that decision.
So you don't see pulling all all guns at any point?
So part of this was a response to law enforcement and others that said we need good actors to stay in. There's a role for those in the market to set standards and make sure there are safe places following. So we did things like we have made some of the systems we use to make sure we do it to the utmost standards available to others. How do we shape a market in a way that is the most responsible?
The other recent move is taking vaping options out of the store. So the reason for that is the health concerns are serious, but the health concerns are serious for tobacco too.
Yeah.
You're still selling tobacco.
I think it is really looking at each market you participate in and thinking about what that is. Vaping is one that I think we exited at a time where it was really unclear what was going on. Regulation was changing. The customer it targeted might not have been the right target. I think
How's that
seen.
different from tobacco? Because we know what's going on with tobacco.
Yeah, we still have to be super responsible in that. And we've been very careful on age standards, all those things. We consider it all the time, what places we sell and what places we don't. And that is hard. And you have to think, many people today have talked about thinking about your customer, moving at the pace they can. And that's one we look at all the time.
So I think you're suggesting your customers would be upset if you stop selling tobacco.
I think we have customers who come to us for lots of things, and how you make sure you do that carefully is really something we consider all the time.
Sounds like the bottom line of today's conversation all the way.
It is.
Julie, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.